Let's get right into it. Welcome to a deep dive into one of the darkest and honestly most fascinating chapters of human history. Today, we're exploring an ancient island fortress that stood completely, absolutely untouched for 4 centuries. Just picture it for a second. The Mediterranean Sea, calm and flat like a mirror, and rising straight out of the water are these massive, 45-meter-high limestone walls. That is Tyre. For 400 years, the people inside those walls fully believed they were invincible. They thought they were entirely out of reach from any continental empire. But, as we're going to see in this explainer, the illusion of absolute invincibility, well, that is usually the very first crack in a civilization's foundation. The downfall of a great civilization does not begin with the roar of guns. It begins in the silence of arrogance. Just think about the profound truth in that statement for a moment. A society doesn't usually start to crumble when the weapons start firing or when the physical walls actually break. It starts long before that. It begins in the silence of arrogance. The elite of Tyre, a society completely run by incredibly powerful financial oligarchs, firmly believed that their vast, almost unimaginable wealth could literally buy them perpetual neutrality from the wheel of fate. They thought their riches made them immune to history itself. Section 1. The Paradox of the Stone Wall. Let's explore the first major philosophical contradiction at the heart of Tyre's defensive strategy. For a long time, history had seemingly proven the Tyrians right. They enjoyed a massive 400-year era as an untouchable island fortress. Decades prior, when the formidable Babylonian tyrant Nebuchadnezzar II laid siege to the city, he spent 13 agonizing years trying to break them, and he ultimately had to withdraw in complete frustration. He just couldn't breach an island sitting a full kilometer off the coast. And because they survived that, the Tyrians developed a fatal blind spot. They locked themselves behind their giant walls and began to falsely believe that the ocean wasn't just water, but some kind of metaphysical, unbreakable barrier that would protect them forever. And this brings us to a truly terrifying historical irony. The very thing that protected them from mainland armies for 4 centuries eventually became their tomb. It's kind of like sleeping in a luxurious, heavy wooden ship during a violent storm, trusting the timber to save you, while completely forgetting that when the ocean truly rages, the strongest life raft can just become a wooden coffin. By relying on a completely static defense against the shifting geopolitical tides, Tyre actually handed their enemy the total freedom to dictate the exact terms of their demise. But before the absolute end came, a genuinely strange event occurred. Ancient historians recorded that in the dead of night, slipping right through the enemy blockade, a silent Tyrian fleet sailed out into the deep water. But here's the catch. They carried no weapons, just massive, empty clay pots. So what were they doing? Were they trying some crazy survival plan or just begging the gods of the deep for help? Keep this detail in the back of your mind because the answer reveals a forgotten ancient technology, and we are going to solve this mystery shortly. Section 2. The Blind Elite. To really understand this collapse, we have to look inside the city walls, at the internal decay of a society run by pure wealth. Behind those incredibly proud walls, Tyre was an oligarchy calcified by capital surplus. For them, absolutely everything, loyalty, divine right, the fate of the nation itself, had a price tag, usually measured in silver coins stamped with winged seahorses. So when a 24-year-old Macedonian king named Alexander the Great showed up at their doorstep, they looked at him through the lens of a completely static capitalist mindset. They just saw a stubborn trading partner to be bargained with. They entirely failed to realize that for a young conqueror driven by dynamic, mythical ambition, imperial honor simply cannot be bought with gold. So what happened when reality finally broke through their illusion? Well, modern archaeology actually found shocking physical evidence of this exact moment in the mud of the Egyptian harbor. Researchers uncovered thousands of broken clay financial seals, they're called bullae, alongside lead measuring weights that had been intentionally melted down. Think about that. In their desperate, absolute final hours, instead of preparing weapons to fight for their lives, the financial elite focused their last remaining resources on destroying their debt records and financial tools. They desperately wanted to erase their system of value before the conqueror could take it. It was, in essence, a profoundly desperate symbolic suicide. Section 3. A tomb from ancestors. Let's transition to the terrifying method Alexander actually used to bridge that ocean gap, which leads to our next massive paradox. We can call this the geographical contradiction, because Alexander didn't just casually build a bridge. No, he harvested the materials to build his massive sea mole by systematically dismantling Ushu, which was the ancient ancestral mainland city of the Tyrians themselves. He chopped down thousands of ancient Lebanese cedars and hurled the giant stones of Tyre's own history directly into the sea to pave his road. Imagine the profound psychological tragedy of watching this unfold from atop the city walls. Every single meter that causeway advanced into the ocean, another memory of their mainland city was buried under the cold water. When you choose to hide behind stone walls, you forget that the world outside keeps moving. The Tyrians looked out and didn't see the open, free ocean anymore. They saw the mainland creeping out to suffocate them. Alexander was literally using the physical bricks of their ancestors' homes to pave a path to their absolute destruction. He used the old body of Tyre to choke out its soul on the island. Section 4. The secret of the underground spring. As this grueling siege dragged into its 5th month, the physical toll inside the city became completely catastrophic. There's a stark contrast in the biological markers from this era. Geoarchaeologists analyzing marine sediment cores from Tyre found a very distinct layer of dark ash mud dating right to the 4th century BC, and this layer contains extreme concentrations of mold spores and bacteria. What does that mean? It proves that the city's rainwater cisterns had stagnated entirely. 30,000 citizens were trapped inside those walls in a suffocating plague of disease and thirst, ironically surrounded by millions of gallons of undrinkable salt water. Which brings us right back to our mystery. Remember the silent fleet with the empty pots? Well, the Tyrians were actually deploying a 500-year-old secret survival technology. In the dead of night, specialized divers were swimming down to the ocean floor, 2 miles out from the coast, using animal skin breathing tubes to locate hidden underwater freshwater springs. They would take those empty clay pots and invert them over the springs to capture the fresh water right as it bubbled up from the earth, securing it just before it could mix with the salty sea. Incredible, right? But as you might expect, Greek engineers eventually discovered this hidden lifeline, and their response was incredibly brutal. Alexander's forces dropped massive iron nets filled with heavy rocks straight down onto those underwater springs, completely blocking them and muddying the water. Just like that, Tyre's very last vein of life was definitively, permanently choked off. And the despair of this moment led to an unbelievable psychological paradox. In absolute panic, the Tyrians took thick chains made of solid gold, and they physically bound the giant bronze statue of the god Apollo to a black marble base inside his temple. They were genuinely deeply terrified that their own god would defect to the side of the young Macedonian king. When humans try to use physical wealth, using gold chains, to bind the divine, it brilliantly illustrates their absolute powerlessness before fate. Section 5. Invisible walls. So, we have to ask ourselves, what does this ancient catastrophe actually have to do with us today? Well, we obviously don't build 45-meter-high limestone walls anymore, but we do build invisible walls that are arguably even more complex. Today, we place absolute trust in abstract digital financial networks and self-regulating tech silos floating in the cloud. We live in a world where value is defined by binary code, and we blindly trust that these abstract, invisible walls will protect us from the physical limits of a depleting planet or from deep geopolitical shifts. The comfort of a sleek digital dashboard can so easily mask the extreme fragility of the actual physical systems keeping us alive. And let's not forget, the physical consequences of human hubris are permanent. Alexander's stone causeway didn't just end a military siege, it permanently altered the geology of the earth. That structure permanently blocked the coastal sea currents. Over the next 3 centuries, millions of tons of fine sand became trapped against it. The greatest port of the ancient world was literally choked and buried under 6 meters of sand, turning the island into a stagnant peninsula forever. It is an irreversible geographical scar caused entirely by human will, and the human cost of this arrogance, it was simply staggering. In August 332 BC, the Great Walls finally fell. 8,000 Tyrians were slaughtered on the very first day. 2,000 young men were crucified along the length of the beach, and 30,000 souls were sold into slavery, completely utterly erasing what was once the vibrant center of the ancient world. The people of Tyre built their walls so high they entirely forgot that what imprisoned them wasn't the enemy outside, but their own illusion of isolation. The ultimate takeaway from all of this is pretty clear. Empires rarely fall simply because they grow naturally weak. They fall because they stop looking at the truth. Which leaves us with a lingering thought as we look back at the ruins of Tyre, resting under the blue water today. We have to honestly ask ourselves, are the modern financial fortresses and the technological walls we build to isolate ourselves today truly any more durable than the blue-streaked stone walls of ancient Tyre? Think about that the next time you look at the complex systems we trust our modern lives to. Thank you for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it sparked your curiosity to look a little closer at the walls around all of us.